just explain it like I'm 5.
Welcome back to Explain It Like I'm 5 or EX5 for short. Today we have on Todd Hitchcock, which is a good friend of mine that we've gone back now for, we've probably known each other for a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
And how we met was I started becoming interested in sneakers. And I was on Instagram just browsing, and there's this guy that looks like David Beckham, and he just looks cool as hell.
I appreciate that.
And you had seemed like you had this plug into sneakers, and
Mhm.
I messaged you and we just kind of hit it off over sneakers. And as I've become a sneakerhead, you've kind of been my sneakerhead dealer per se, my version of a pusher, but for shoes.
Nice.
And
Legalized drugs, right?
yeah, legalized drugs, which is just sneakers. It's as bad as gambling or drugs when you get into it. But I
Sure.
thought that it would be really interesting to have you on the show
Mhm.
and fill our listeners in on the sneaker game because we're hearing more and more about it, and people are wondering, why should I care? What's
Mhm.
the backstory on that? And I thought there'd be no better person than yourself to have on
Well,
here.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, so thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, your day job, and then
Mhm.
what's your connection to sneakers?
Yeah. So, first off, thanks for having me in. I really appreciate this. It's pretty cool to do. Um, it's really kind of funny when I tell people actually what my day job is, because they don't think I'm smart enough to do this job. But I work in genetics actually. Work with IVF and infertility doctors, helping people have babies from a genetics standpoint. So it's people kind of look at me kind of like, wait.
Isn't that called a stud?
Um, well, if you're providing the actual materials per se to do that, yes, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm just making sure that the genetic profiles for these embryos that they're pushing back into mom are actually genetically viable to produce a healthy pregnancy. So
So you
that's
work between the company and the hospital to provide a service that makes in vitro more successful.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm on the diagnostic side.
Okay.
So basically ensuring that they're getting what they pay for. They're optimizing what they're paying for, so that we have a healthy baby. So that's ultimately the end goal. So that's my day to day. And having that job is actually kind of made my my addiction to sneakers easier because I travel the country. So I've been able to establish relationships with boutiques or people just all over the country. If I'm going to certain places, one place that I've really kind of made a big connection with is in Detroit. With my guys up at Burn Rubber in Detroit. It was if I'm in a certain city or whatever, I always kind of research like what the local boutiques are, what the local stores are, and in my downtime, I'll go and check them out. And I've created a pretty good relationship with those guys just by showing up in their store, every few weeks, and not just going after what people considered hyped, but just like day to day shoes, whether it be for me or for my kids or whatever, and just kind of create that bond with those guys. And then it got to a situation where if I need things and I'm not going to be in the city, I can simply just text them and they'll send me an invoice and they show up at my doorstep a few days later. So
So
it's
you're not talking about window shopping here. You're
no,
talking
no,
about
no.
when you travel, you're looking for sneakers that you may not be able to get in Kansas City or
Yeah,
hometown.
yeah, absolutely. Because really locally in Kansas City, we don't really have like a go-to like boutique store that carries the type of things that I'm after. So I always try to do that all over the place. It's actually led to creating some pretty awesome relationships. I randomly walked into a foot action in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and saw a pair of Jordans on the wall that I had been searching for months. And the manager of that store, Rich, um, we just kind of struck up a conversation, and then just like I just kind of dropped. I was like, "Man, I've been looking for these for months." And at that time, I lived in Southwest Kansas, and no zero availability to anything, what people would call limited out there. And he was like, he kind of saw that I was genuine about it. That I wasn't just after these to try to flip them, make a profit, or whatever. I truly have a genuine interest in the shoes. And there's an upcoming release, and he's like, you know what? Here's my number. Whenever these come out, I've got you. Just text me, PayPal me the money, and I'll just send it to you. And that was probably 5 years ago. And to this day, Rich is one of my best friends. He's actually coming into town next weekend. Um, it's really kind of odd how sneakers have developed a bunch of relationships. Like you and I, like, that's how it started with shoes. But yet, whenever we get together, like we're at a point to where, even with Rich or whoever, like we don't even talk shoes anymore because we've actually become friends. It's kind of strange how shoes have created like this natural bond between people because I think it kind of brings like personalities together. Billy that you had on here, he's actually become one of my good friends because of shoes.
And you two texted for like well over
Oh
like
yeah.
a long time before you actually even met in person. I had to like
Oh
broker the
yeah.
meeting to actually
Exactly.
get you guys to meet in
Yeah, we've been
person.
talking for months before we actually even met in person. That's how it's been with a lot of people that I've met on social media and stuff. And then like if I'm in their city or wherever, like we'll meet up and it's just like we're best friends, even though we've never actually met people in person. My wife thinks it's weird as hell, but
I think
like
most of the listeners will think it's weird as hell, unless you're a sneaker guy, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because if you're a sneaker guy, it's not that weird, you know? But to somebody who doesn't understand it, like it's like, wait, hold on, this is kind of strange. Like you're flying to a city meeting a random person, but they're not random. They're people that, have become a common ground and it's pretty cool. Like if I look through my contacts in my phone, people who I consider my best friends, like at my bachelor party, like all the guys that were there, like you and a few other people, like the relationship started with shoes. It's really kind of weird how shoes have like afforded me and my kids and stuff, different things. We can kind of go into that a little bit later, but it's or we can do it now.
Well, let's talk about sneakers. What was your
Yeah.
first pair of sneakers? What got you in the game? What
So
got you? What got you hooked?
So I was fortunate to grow up in kind of the golden era of sneakers. So we're talking like, late 80s, up and through the 90s. So it was actually the
How old are you for listeners?
yeah, so I'm 39, just turned 39 a few weeks ago. Uh so that I was very fortunate to grow up during that time period. But I also grew up in a time period where people thought it was ludicrous to spend $100 on a pair of shoes. That was the retail for a men's size, Jordan, whatever, was $100, which now that's doubled. My parents were along the lines of like, I am not spending $100 on a pair of shoes for you to just go out and destroy. So, um, the shoe that really kind of caught my eye was obviously the Jordan 3. It originally dropped in 1988. It was a shoe that I just loved. It was, you'd never seen anything like it before. I was a
Do we
huge
have that
Jordan
pair
fan.
here?
Well, yes, we have a Jordan 3 here for sure. If you can grab that there. Yeah, so this is, obviously the Jordan 3 white cement. This is the shoe that really set it off for me. And this pair here actually is the retro. They retroed this shoe in '94. And this was the first Jordan that my grandmother purchased for me in 1994. I was in like seventh grade,
For
eighth
the
grade.
listeners, when you say retroed, what do you mean?
So a retro release is just a remake of the original version.
Okay.
So when when I say like retroed, it's just a re-release of the original version. So this shoe embodies a lot for me, and to what for me, like I think everybody's story is different. It's like what sneakers or shoes really mean to a person. For me, this shoe takes me back to Springfield, Missouri, Battlefield Mall, Foot Locker. I mean, I can remember it like it was yesterday. Like if the salesperson walked in this door, I'd recognize them because that's just how vivid of a memory it was for me. So, this shoe takes me back to my grandparents. My grandparents were very influential in my life, and they meant a lot to me. So,
And tell us a story about how you had these, they went away, and how you got them back.
oh man, yeah,
That's a great story.
yeah. So, not that I'm still bitter about it or anything, but I came back from I went to college, and I left a lot of stuff at my parents' house, and came back for the summer, and I was going through my closet, and I was like, wait, hold on, where are my Jordans? Like where are these? Like there's something missing here, and so I hunted. So I went to my mom. I was like, Mom, where are those Jordans? Where are my Jordans? And she's like, oh, those old ratty things that have been sitting in your closet. I'm like, first off, those aren't old and ratty. Those are my Jordans. Where are they? She's like, oh, I had a garage sale a few weeks ago, and this guy named Ivan bought them. I was like, you did what? Like, hold on. She's like, what do you mean? Like, you haven't worn those things in forever. I'm like, but Mom, like I'm kind of a hoarder in a way, and I needed those. Like I immediately panicked. And it's similar to like, when you go away and your mom like sold your baseball cards or whatever, but these are my Jordans. Like I don't mess around with this. So I knew the guy that bought them, hunted that guy down.
And this is before internet, Facebook, and all
Yeah.
this. So like you really had to get investigative to hunt
I
this guy
really
down.
did, yeah. Luckily, I kind of knew who he was and kind of knew of his. He lived in like the town like 3 or 4 miles down the road. So like I went there and like asked around, like where does Ivan live? Where is this guy at? And I showed up on his door. Like the guy didn't really even know me. And I'm knocking on this guy's door, like, hey, it's gonna be really weird, but you bought a pair of shoes from my mom's garage sale like a few weeks ago, and I kind of need those back. And he was like, no, I'm actually, no, I'm good. I kind of like those. I'm like, you don't understand. Like, I need those back. I was like, I'll pay you double what you paid my mom for them. Like, I need those back. He's like, oh, okay. Well, if that's the case, go ahead. I mean, she only sold them for like $20, so I had to give $40 for them. It was well worth it. I probably would have paid 3 times that, but I needed those shoes back. So, they haven't left my possession since, and they've since been through a remodel. The midsole's been redone. They need to be done again, but this is just one of those things that will never leave my possession.
And why is it so important to you?
Because it takes me back, it takes me back to 1994, to a time, I was infatuated with shoes, man. Like I would get in trouble, like
More than you are now?
oh, more so.
I've seen your basement, and it would scream infatuation to anyone else that sees it.
It probably screams a lot of things to different people if they were to see it. But like, it just takes me back. It takes me back to when I was a kid. It takes me back to my grandparents. It takes me back to like, when I was walking out of the store with these things on my feet, like you couldn't tell me nothing. Like I was the freaking coolest kid on the block. Like it just symbolized like I wanted these things so bad, and it was just, and this was before social media, before all of those things. And like, but now it has a different meaning. It takes, my grandparents were, they were everything to me. And this is what she bought for me. So this means a lot.
Let's talk on gross scale.
Yeah.
Let's talk on gross scale. When did the first sneaker get invented? When we talk about sneakers today and we talk
Yeah.
about rubberized soles, when
Yeah.
did that get invented? Who invented it?
Yeah.
How'd that go down?
Yeah, so I think that's really accredited to Phil Knight. Back in the late '70s, he was involved a lot with the Oregon track program, and I don't know if you've ever read the book Shoe Dog. The Phil Knight story with Nike and stuff. It's a great read.
Story.
Great read if you haven't read it. Of course, I picked it up and read it within a few days, and I hate to read, so I've only read 2 books: Bo Knows Bo, and Shoe Dog. Obviously, for the content. Um, that's kind of around when like the first, like, I guess, sneaker came around, and it was actually one of Nike's shoes now called the Waffle Racer. And it was because the actual rubber sole of it was molded in a actual waffle iron and then just attached to a running shoe. And then Phil Knight was flipping these things out of his trunk. And at first, the Nike wasn't known as Nike. It was actually called Blue Ribbon Sports. And what's cool is if you can get like a Pegasus Nike running shoe now, and you can flip it over and look on the outsole, and you'll see BRS 1000, and that stands for Blue Ribbon Sports.
Which
And
most people don't know. They were importing
Mhm.
shoes from ASICS. Is that right?
yeah, so that and they were kind of taking the soles off and then putting on their own thing.
Right. So Nike started not as Nike making
Mhm.
their own shoes. They started distributing out of Japan
Mhm.
and bringing in ASICS
Yep.
shoes and then just modifying them,
Yeah.
and then figured, hey, we better start making our own. Is that right?
Yeah, yep, that's right. And BRS, and it was cool. So when I worked at Foot Action, when I was finishing my college degree, I had once I finished football and I still had a few classes to go, I worked at a local Foot Action here. We actually had a Nike rep come in and just give us the history behind everything. They're actually called Eakins. And Nike reps are actually called Eakins, which is Nike backwards. And they just really dug into all that stuff. We talk about like the Phylon soles and like the difference between like the compressed Phylon and the expanded Phylon, and like and just little things here and there that Nike puts on their stuff that nobody else would really know unless you're really looking for it. Like the BRS 1000, that means Blue Ribbon Sports, and it was founded with $1,000. The average everyday person didn't know that, but like as me, like I was like, man, this is really cool. So
Why is Nike so important in sneaker culture? It
You know-
seems to always be the staple.
Yeah, because I think they were the first, I think kind of the first brand to really dig into like really big marketing campaigns. Like they were always big in like track and field, obviously with like Oregon track and field and stuff like that. But I think they really kind of started taking off whenever they signed a man named Michael Jeffrey Jordan, and that would have been Actually, Jordan didn't want to sign with Nike coming out of college because he wore Converse when he was at UNC. Um, but they Converse kind of passed on signing him.
Dumb decision.
Dumb decision. And they signed Jordan and decided to kind of make him like a feature athlete. And when they launched the Jordan 1, it kind of made a lot of waves because it was actually banned by the NBA. So that's where we get the Jordan 1 banned, the black and red, because it didn't meet their color requirements. And
But there was hype behind it when it got banned. I mean, they
mhm,
got lucky, right? They
yeah,
turned a bad opportunity into a good
yeah,
opportunity where it was like it was banned because MJ was so good. It must have been the shoes,
yeah,
right?
and had to have been the shoes,
Right.
and they really kind of doubled down on that and really kind of made that a feature of their marketing program, and it was awesome, and then also Jordan was kind of was a very transcendent athlete. He's out there on the court rocking a Cuban gold chain, and and he was flashy. He was sticking his tongue out. He was dunking on people. He was coming after people and being kind of showy about it, and kind of going after the legends of the game like Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, and like who's this young kid coming into the game and just kind of really changing things, and oh, what are these on his feet? And then it gets banned by the NBA, and it just kind of created that whole like marketing wave, and Nike really rode that wave and took advantage of that. So that's just kind
They've
of
been a
where they went.
staple ever since
Yeah,
and driving the culture. Just do it.
yeah,
Bo Jackson, which you actually got a pair of
yeah,
Bo Jackson sneaks here that I got a great story on, right?
yeah. So these were discovered. So number one, Bo Jackson's probably my favorite athlete of all time. And they this is a prime example of how Nike really influenced sneakers was from marketing. Like if you've ever seen the Bo Knows Bo commercials, like you see Bo Knows football, Bo Knows baseball, but then they took that into Bo Knows hockey, Bo Knows weightlifting, Bo Knows basketball, like, and just really, and then at the end, Bo You Don't Know Diddley, and you've got Bo Diddley on there, playing the guitar, and they actually, one of the scenes is Bo Jackson trying to play the guitar, and he's obviously didn't do it. But Bo was arguably the best athlete that's ever walked this planet. He's pretty amazing. And so this is a dead stock pair from 1992, never even been laced up. And I was fortunate enough to meet Bo this spring and had him autograph the toe there. So this is when you say a Grail sneaker, this is definitely a Grail sneaker for
What would
me.
you say a pair of sneakers like this with this story with that signature would sell for?
I don't. It really depends on the buyer. Like to someone like me who just loves this shoe and loves Bo Jackson and loves that. Like obviously, I'm going to pay more than some like 15-year-old kids going to, because they don't know this shoe. They don't know the story behind it. It doesn't really resonate with them. So I mean, if I was to find this, I mean, $500 maybe. Which kind of might surprise some people because you're like, wow, those are extremely rare. Bo signed it like this, but it's all really what it means to a person. For me, I would probably pay a little more for this because it takes me back again. Like it takes me back to 1992 when I was, in junior high and like loving Bo Jackson, watching him play for the Royals and the Raiders and just those commercials and the posters. And it was just a really cool time. And like, man, I remember when those shoes came out, like I just wanted them so bad just because that's what Bo Jackson wore, and that's what I really wanted. And
And for the listeners, sneakers can go up much higher in price. And what drives which we'll get into here in a bit, but we've got some sneakers here that you're talking about could be $3,000-$4,000.
yeah,
So what
yeah,
drives that? You talked about what someone will pay, but is it also demand and overall popularization and culture, or
yeah.
what drives that price?
So it's influencers, and that's a term that I don't really like to use a lot just because I'm old. But like in today's kind of social media hype driven communities, it's influencers. Like we talk about like it's not really athletes anymore that are really kind of pushing these things. I mean, you obviously have your signature athletes like LeBron and Katie and Steph
Yeah, but
and
no one's saying, "Hey, I picked up a new pair of LeBrons." Usually,
exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah, it's more of like it's Kanye, it's Travis Scott, it's Drake. It's like, these people who are kind of leading the mainline cultures. That's what people are really after, and Nike, for all that Nike's done right, I think they've kind of done a couple things wrong, and one of them is I think how they manage the relationship with Kanye West. Um, they did a few, Nike Yeezys, and then and then Kanye being Kanye wanted more control over that and wanted to have kind of free reign to do whatever they wanted to, and Nike was like, "No, we're good."
What year was so for I think a lot of people may have heard that Kanye's made these sneakers with Adidas, but there
Mhm,
was a time period where you're mentioning
mhm,
that Kanye made some Nike sneakers. What
yeah.
year are we talking about
So
with
we're talking
this?
about the, like late to like what was that? Oh gosh, I'm trying to think when those actually it was like before 2010,
Okay.
around that time period. And I think the Red Octobers were a shoe that many, like, oh, Red
Right.
October, they know that name. I think that was like what, 2012, that
Okay, so not
that
too
era.
long
Not
ago.
too long ago. Yeah. So it wasn't long after that Yeezy was dropped that the relationship with Nike and Kanye really got tumultuous and they severed that relationship because I think Kanye wanted more of a full control over what was going on, and Nike being Nike's like, "Wait, no, we're Nike.
Right.
Like, we're gonna kind of tell you what to do." Because I think Kanye just wanted to do more. He wanted to be more free flowing and
So
be
he goes
allowed
to
to do more
Adidas.
things. So he goes to Adidas, and Adidas was like, "Dude, we'll let you do whatever you want. Like, we'll do
Smart.
your we'll do-" yeah, which was genius on because it was around that time when things really started shifting away from Nike. I mean, Nike's always going to be Nike. Like, let's not get this twisted. Like, Adidas will never be on the level of Nike just because Nike is a worldwide brand. They've got so many different product lines. They dominate certain product lines, and
And
they'll
you
never
also
be on that
can't
line.
change history. It's one thing people
Exactly.
forget about a
Yep.
business and a brand is if you
Yep.
create history,
Mhm.
you can't change the past. They will
Exactly.
always have their history.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, Jordan Brand alone makes him $1 billion year over
Which
year.
is interesting because Jordan Brand is separate than Nike, and most people
Yes.
don't know that.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Which is why, like whenever they release a retro Jordan and it says Nike Air on the back, like people like me like freak out, like, oh man, thank you, thank God, because that's what we grew up with, that's what we knew.
Mhm.
So then, what was that, late '90s, early 2000s is when Jordan Brand, separated and kind of became its own thing. And then you see like the Jumpman logo with Air on the back of it, and it's like, oh, okay, this is cool, but this isn't what I remember. But
Let's talk a little bit more about Kanye. What's been
yeah,
his impact to the sneaker industry?
he's man, he was kind of like one of the first like non-athletes to really kind of make waves, I think. Well, I take that back. So one of the first designers and people to really kind of I guess show people like the influence that sneakers can have on a culture would be Jeff Staple. When Jeff Staple did his Pigeon Dunk release in New York, it caused riots that made the front page of New York Times.
Mm.
So that was when like people were like, "Wait, hold on! Like, why are people fighting in the streets? Because they wanted these freaking Pigeon Dunks."
Well, it's
And
New York. We expect fighting
well,
in the streets
yeah,
to be a
exactly. New York is a whole nother thing, but just like that really, I think, kind of brought it to the mainstream when it's on the front page of the New York Times. Like
mm.
it was a big deal, and that's Jeff Staple. Like not a lot of people know Jeff Staple, and if for those people who don't know, like if you've ever seen a shirt with a little pigeon on it, that's Jeff Staple. In the streetwear industry, he's kind of a legend.
Okay.
He's very well known. So, but then that kind of went away, and then Kanye was really someone, the first kind of non-athlete to really kind of take it to another level. Because at that time, his music was huge. He's coming off of, he's probably like the number one like name in music there for a while.
And we've
Whenever,
got one of the first Kanye Adidas shoes
Mhm.
here,
Yeah.
correct?
So this is the Turtle Dove. This was like the first, the Yeezy 350 that came out. It was probably what through. Let me see what the production date on this was. This was
You can actually decipher production dates from inside the shoe.
Well, this one does not. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think when these. So that would have been 2000, probably what, 14, 14, 15. Um, I mean, this is a very out of the box sneaker. I mean, around this time, like the Nike
August 22nd, 2015.
15. There you go, 15. I always try to like get release dates by like how old my kids are, which is kind of
Hmm.
like a total dad thing to do.
So they dropped this in 2015. We're only
Yeah,
talking 3 years ago.
yeah, yeah. So
What made this unique?
I mean, just look at it. This was a shoe that that nobody ever like design wise. This was very, very different from anything. And also, this was like one of the first shoes for you can kind of see on the bottom here. It's got a fully encapsulated Boost sole in it.
Which I'm somewhat of a manufacturing geek. And
Mhm,
what I find most fascinating about what Kanye did with these, this is the first kind of really commercial explosion of the Ultra Boost technology, which is this type of responsive
mhm,
material that is infused together, which is the Ultra Boost on the bottom. And this is before we saw like exposed Ultra Boost, and it's also the first time they used a 3D knitting process,
mhm,
where most people that design it would never put a seam down the center of a shoe,
mhm.
and when you look at it, it's actually one single piece of a knitted material that then is sewn at the center part.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a manufacturing leap. I think that, Adidas really showcased with Kanye and tested the market in a
Mhm.
limited form. Well, people like the Ultra Boost.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a comfortable shoe, right?
This shoe, I mean, even if Kanye's name wasn't attached to this, I would buy this shoe because it's an extremely comfortable shoe.
And rare.
And yes, these are pretty rare. I think people kind of slept on these in the when they first dropped. Nobody really knew kind of how they were doing. There was obviously some hype behind it because it's Kanye's first shoe with Adidas, but um, I think I had like 12 pair of these when they first came out.
And what do these
And
sell for now?
so, in this condition, obviously I wear my shoes, but if these were dead stock, I mean, we're talking easily 2,500 to three
And
grand.
what is dead stock?
Dead stock means, fresh out of the box, never been put on a foot, never been worn.
So you bought them and held them,
Yeah, yeah. If you bought them and sat on them, you're sitting on, these. I mean, you could easily probably get about 3 grand for a dead stock pair of these, depending on size.
but
And
you wear yours.
I do, yeah, yeah, because I'm not in the game of buying and flipping and stuff like that. Even though, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've done it and still will do it every now and again. But um,
That's not your day job.
it's not
So
my day
you
job.
enjoy the sneaks. That's
I
why you
do,
get them.
yeah, and that's I enjoy shoes. Like I enjoy wearing these things. Like again, it takes me back to like when I walked out of that Foot Locker back in 1994. Like that feeling of like, man, I've got some heat on my feet, and and this is I like it. I like when people pay attention to it or when people give you compliments, like things like that. Like that was like I mean, again, it takes me back to when I was a kid.
So would you say the Yeezys are really that good from a comfort fit standpoint?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. All hype aside, like it's a good shoe. Like I love the way it fits. I love how comfortable they are. We took a trip to New York a few years ago and I got my wife a pair of the Beluga 350s, the 350 V2 version of these, with some updates. And she wore them all day, all around New York. We're walking around everywhere, subways, this and that. And like zero fatigue, at the end of the day, because it's a good shoe. Like it's a very well made shoe and very comfortable. Again, if not Kanye's name wasn't associated with them, I'd still wear them. It's a great
Would you
shoe.
say Kanye is a genius or crazy?
Yes, both.
Both.
Yeah, because I think you kind of have to be a little crazy to be a genius. I mean, if you look back at like all people in history that we consider geniuses, they're a little crazy. Look at Monet. Look at whoever you want to talk about is considered a genius. They're a little crazy.
Let's go back a little bit and take me through kind of the major moments in sneaker history.
Yeah. So again, I think you'd have to go, kind of first, if you want to draw a timeline, go back to Jordan, go back to the Jordan 1, whenever it was banned by the NBA. Like, I think that was a pivotal time in shoes. And kind of fast forward that a little bit to maybe like around 1988 when the Jordan 3 dropped, because that was the first Jordan to have an exposed air bubble in the back and also the first Jordan shoe to have the Jumpman logo on it.
And what was also important about that? Who was involved in the design
Yeah,
process?
so, kinda like the godfather of sneaker design, Tinker Hatfield. He's, Tinker's gosh, he's contributed so many things to the sneaker world, and, like, if he's a legend, he's behind some of the most iconic shoes to ever be released, and
From my understanding, he was the guy that actually convinced Jordan to stay
Mhm,
at
mhm,
Nike because
mhm,
coming into the Jordan 3, he wasn't overly happy with Nike. Contract was up, and he
yeah,
came back with the Jordan 3 and
yeah,
said, "Hey, this is what I think you should do." And he fell
yep,
in love. And Tinker
yep.
and Jordan really built the relationship.
Yeah, because the Jordan 2 was a flop. The Jordan 2 was just it was like a moon boot. Like Jordan really didn't like it. It hurt his foot. Like he actually broke his foot like during that time period, and like he just didn't like the Jordan 2 at all. and wasn't very happy with everything. And then um, then he, kind of came around the Jordan 3, and the Jordan 3 was just, it's one of the most transcendent shoes ever. It was the shoe he was wearing during the iconic photo of him jumping from the free throw line in the '88 dunk contest. Um,
And for listeners that when we're talking about Jordan 1, 2, 3, Jordan as the end of it at the time as an individual sneaker, they just called the next
mm,
iteration of the design 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're now up
yeah.
to Jordan 33, correct? I think that
Yes.
just
Yeah.
dropped.
Just well, it's they had the shoe hasn't officially released.
Okay,
It
announced it.
releases. Yeah, they had like a release event out in LA. One of my friends, actually here from Kansas City, was actually at the release party and was part of the media for that. Um,
So you
it's
get the
an
Jordan 3.
mm,
The
yeah,
Jordan 3 is really, MJ at his height of hype,
yeah.
and what happens after that?
Well, and also along with the Jordan 3 is when all the when Spike Lee did the commercials with Jordan, is it the shoes? Is it the shoes? It must be the shoes, and like all the iconic commercials that go along with that. That was a pretty cool time too. The Mars Blackman commercials, and to kind of maybe say something else a little bit about Tinker Hatfield, he was also the designer of the Air Max One, which was, for people who are really into the runners and that kind of style, like that's just an iconic shoe and will always be an iconic shoe. They released, last year was the 30th anniversary for that shoe, and they released kind of the anniversary colorways of that with the white and red, the black, well, excuse me, the white and navy, and then the navy and red. Like that was a really cool shoe. That's one of my favorite shoes of all time as well. So, then you kind of fast forward a little bit into like the early '90s with like the Air Force Max and the Fab Five and Chris Webber, and that was around the time when black socks kind of became a thing, and like the baggy shorts, and that's when I think things kind of really picked up, maybe like on the inner city side of things, because here are these black dudes, like they're flamboyant, they're in your face, they got shaved heads, they're wearing these Nikes, they're wearing black socks and baggy shorts, and just like five freshmen just turning the college basketball world up on its head. And like that was a very iconic time for shoes as well, because then everybody of course looks at the shoes. Charles, that was a Charles Barkley shoe, and he was wearing that on the court, and Charles was kind of a in your face, no apologies, I'm not a role model type thing. Actually had a commercial with Nike saying, I am not a role model. That was a very transcendent time in sports. And I mean, just like through the '90s was just the golden era. I mean, you had Jordan, you had Bo Jackson, you had Deion Sanders. Actually, today, I just saw this on the Twitter feed before I came in. Today was Spark was the first time somebody had played baseball and football. When first time Deion Sanders did it, was on this day, like back in '92, and so you had those athletes. You had the Fab Five. You had also the Little Penny. If you remember Penny Hardaway, he had those commercials with Tyra Banks and Little Penny. Like that was Tyra Banks, fool. Like people my age know that, and that
Yep.
was all through the '90s. These and you can see the influence of the '90s even on shoes that are being released today. Like even down to like colorways. Like if you say the word infrared to a guy my age, I know what infrared is. It's a color. It's a color that was released on the Air Max 90. It was the red part that was on the Jordan 6. That was an infrared. Like it's the Moab colorway. Like people know what that means when you say that. If you say cement or black and cement, white and cement, they know that that's a name of a colorway for a Jordan shoe, whether it be the 3 or the 4. Like if you say Bordeaux, people know that's the maroon color from a Jordan 7. And all that happened through the '90s. Like all of that happened through the '90s, and you can like,
And then you also got Run DMC around this time, right?
yeah, Run DMC, did some things with. They actually had a song called My Adidas, with the shell toe Adidas. Like that's an iconic shoe that,
The Superstar.
yeah, that shoe will never go away. People today are rocking those. They don't even know who the heck Run DMC is and don't really know the history behind it. But it's still pretty cool, to see that going on.
So you go in the 90s, really golden era, sports, basketball. Then you go
Mhm.
into the early 2000s. What happens in the early 2000s?
So around that time was when like the retro Jordans like really became a thing. Like you kind of had a big run. Nike retroed some Jordans like in '94. They retroed the 3 and they retroed the 1. kind of did okay. Really wasn't a thing. Like obviously for me, like the Jordan, I got the retro Jordan 3 in '94, and that was like my first Jordan, but didn't really catch a whole lot of steam. But then they kind of rode the wave, kind of let a little bit of time pass, and then like in the year 2000, they retroed the black and red Jordan 11, which for some people that's just an
Which we've got
iconic
a
shoe.
Jordan 11
We
here.
do, yeah. Yeah, so, here's a Jordan 11. This is I know another Tinker Hatfield design. Um, this for many is a very iconic shoe. Originally from, 95, right smack in the middle of the Jordan's
Which
heydays.
this uses patent leather,
Hmm.
which was unique, something that Jordan wanted to
Yep.
integrate. And what most people know a Jordan 11 for is the Space Jam,
Yeah.
which, while whether you think the movie's good or not, what came out of that was a pretty great sneaker.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually one of my son's favorite sneakers, and he's going to turn 7 in November. We're talking like, he obviously was not even a thought whenever that Jordan when the Space Jam was
Slight
released.
sidebar. What would you say to all the parents out there that say, I'm not going to buy my kids nice shoes because they're just going to grow out of them?
Yeah. Actually, for me, shoes have created a special bond between my son and I. It's kind of one of those things that like I hope he remembers whenever he gets older, like just little things. So Space Jam was re-released in 2016, in December of 2016, and so my son had just turned 5. And like I'd already introduced him to the movie Space Jam, and that's one of his favorite movies of all time ever. Whenever that shoe re-released, like my son knew that. It was like, Dad, when the Space Jam's coming, when the Space Jam's coming, when the Space Jam's coming. It's like we marked it on our calendars. Like it was an actual thing that we were looking forward to. So on the morning of the release, we go down to the plaza, go down to the House of Hoops of Foot Locker. We picked up our Jordans, went back home, put them on our feet, sat on the couch, and watched Space Jam again. And that was just like one of those things that, like, as a dad, I'm always going to remember that. Like, it created like a special little thing. And like to this day, like, it's just something cool that me and my kids have. Like, my daughter's into it too. Like, she'll text me pictures here and there about shoes that she likes. And the older she gets, obviously, the more expensive
And
those
it's
things are
hard to
getting.
find when, as kids grow older, it's hard to find those things that you two can
Yeah,
bond over. And
absolutely.
my daughter, I have two daughters, 6 and
Mhm.
3, which you've met, and
Yeah,
I started buying sneakers for them because I just rejected the theory that I shouldn't buy them sneakers, and I teach them about them, teach them how to
yeah,
take care of them and stuff like
yeah.
that. And when they grow out of them, they're asking what else they can buy. And so they've got Space Jams, and my oldest has a pair of Boost 350s, and
Yeah.
they just really get into that stuff.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that like, for me, like I've said, it takes me back to when I was a kid. So hopefully, whenever my son and my daughter get older, like they'll go back to like, Dad, remember when we went down and did that? Like it's just a bond thing. Like actually have a pair of Jordans that were released on the day that my daughter was born. So like every time I look at that shoe, I think about the morning that my daughter was born. Like it's not a Jordan that's by any means hyped or anything. It's a low top, all white Air Jordan 9, which some people hate the Jordan 9, but like I love that shoe because that was the day my daughter was born. And it was just a really cool thing. So as a dad and as a and just I'm always kind of looking for those things that connect you to people and connect. And for me, that connects me to my kids. And like, it's just a cool memory. Like we'll look back on that. Like, remember when we did this, did that? And like this shoe here actually was, so my son was born November 1st and these, released on Black Friday of 2011. And I remember that was the first shoe that I camped out for, a few weeks after my son was born. And I bought him a pair as well, even though he was only a few weeks old. Like, so like this shoe will never leave my possession because it'll remind me of that was the year my son was born. So it's just shoes mean different things to different people, and this shoe will mean something to you, a little more, here in a few months. So
Yeah, I'll be getting married in February,
yeah,
and both James and Todd are my groomsmen in the wedding. And I text Todd and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking I should wear a pair of Jordans instead of a pair of like dress shoes, which you
yeah,
sometimes see." And he was like, the Jordan 11 Concords are dropping in December. And that's a grail shoe for me.
yeah,
It's something I've always wanted to have. And so, for me, that will represent my marriage and that
yeah.
type of stuff. When you see a pair of sneakers on somebody, what would you say shoes represent about that person when they're wearing them?
Well, if you want to go back to the Forrest Gump line, you can tell a lot about a man by his shoes. Um, and you can tell. I mean, it's really funny, like because I travel so much and I spend a lot of time in airports, and being a shoe guy, like I always look at people's shoes as they're walking by, and it's like, okay, that guy over there, he's very sensible. You know, he doesn't really care much about style or whatever. He just wants a pair of shoes that are very comfortable, just gets him from A to B. Might be the only pair of tennis shoes he owns, but you know what? That's all he wants. Um, you can look at a person and their outfit, it's kind of like, well, not that person kind of really plays into hype, and he really cares about what other people
Like a
think. Like it's
a pair of Supremes or
yeah,
something.
exactly. Like, and it's pretty cool. Like, um, it's again, I always kind of go back to, and I kind of show my age here a little bit too, because I myself had to kind of rethink, what sneakers meant to me, a few years ago, because I think everybody kind of gets themselves maybe caught up in the hype about like trying to impress other people, and with social media, you can get really wrapped up into that, and you kind of lose kind of what certain things mean to you, and I was very guilty of it myself, of like buying stuff that, just because I could, and then maybe posting pictures of it on Instagram, whatever, getting, however many likes, and be like, yeah, it's cool. But then I'd end up like selling them or something because the shoe actually didn't mean anything to me. So I kind of had to really kind of like, wait, hold on. Like, what am I really doing this for? Like, who am I trying to impress? Strangers out there on social media that I don't know. Like, is that really adding anything to me? So like, I've really slowed down over the past few years and really kind of, buying things that like mean something to me. It's about wearability these days for me. Like, I'm not trying to impress other people, but if it's a pair of shoes that I really love, like I'm gonna get it because I like it and I want to wear it, and not really concerned about what other people think about it, whether it be a hype shoe or not. Like the Jordans that I have on today, like it's a Jordan 3. It's a very wearable colorway. It just happens to also be a collaboration with Justin Timberlake.
Throw those up on the
Yeah.
table because they're a really unique look. So these are a Jordan 3 co-design between Justin Timberlake and Tinker Hatfield, correct?
Yep. Yeah, and what's also very interesting about this shoe is, if you notice, on like the Jordan 3 that we showed earlier, there's no swoosh. But on these, there is a swoosh because it goes back to the original design by Tinker Hatfield. The original Jordan 3 design by Tinker had a swoosh on it. And they actually ended up scrapping that at the minute and didn't, produce that. But this was kind of a, 2018, 1988 was an anniversary year, for the Jordan 3. So they re-released it this year. But the original sketch, actually should have brought those in today, but the original sketch that he had a swoosh on it. And, they released those this year. So when Timberlake did that release, he actually wore a pair of the cement 3s with the little swoosh on or whatever at halftime of the Super Bowl. And Nike did a drop at the halftime of the Super Bowl.
Which is funny because when you are a sneaker guy, and no one would have seen this.
Yeah.
But I remember watching the Super Bowl with
Yeah.
Lily, who
Yeah.
I'm soon to be married to. And I remember him coming out in a pair of Jordan 3s
Yeah.
that just looked different to me because I'm
Yeah.
not as deep in the game as you are. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, those just look different. And I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? I bet you they're going to drop a sneaker tomorrow. And they had dropped it during the Super Bowl
During the
thing.
Super Bowl, yeah.
And they used that as a marketing moment. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, they're extremely smart about that. And Timberlake had his Man of the Woods tour, this year, and it's a lot of like, woodsy, kind of almost like lumberjacky type stuff. And if you look at these shoes, they got like a tan suede to it, so it has a very, kind of fit his, his tour and kind of his clothing line. So
Before we talk about the sneaker business and on the larger scale, something I just thought about is how important is sneaker care in short form, and what would you recommend? Because I'm a guy that uses Never Wet.
Yeah.
But explain to people, like, when you go check out, they're like, hey, do you want some spray protective? And you're always like, psh, stop upselling me. How important is it?
Extremely. That's the first thing I do when I buy a pair of shoes. And the ones that I personally use, as far as like number one protectant, is Crep, CREP, Crep. One spray will almost virtually make them bulletproof. Like, if
You
you
can
look,
genuinely pour anything on these things and then just wipe them right off.
absolutely, yeah. Actually, if this mesh, this white mesh on here is like a sneakerhead's worst nightmare, because if you get this dirty, forget it. Like, if it's unprotected,
You're not cleaning it.
you're not. It's going to yellow. You're not going to get that clean. But if you Crep protect this, you could put ketchup on this, and it's just gonna,
Which
you
is
can clean it
important
off.
with kid shoes. So when you're talking about
Absolutely.
the skeptics out there that say, I'm still not buying my kids a pair of Jordans or Hirachis or whatever they may
Yeah.
be, never wet them or crep them,
Yep.
and you extend the life of those shoes drastically.
For sure. Yeah. So another awesome example is the the cream or the all white Yeezy 350 V2s, which originally or when they were released last year was actually on my wedding day. So I actually absolutely own those as well does my wife. Um, I got a pair for my daughter. You know, she's a junior in high school and she will beat the daylights out of those things. So first thing I did before I shipped them to her was spray those suckers down with Crep Protect. You know, so more of a preventative measure, being proactive instead of reactive on that. As far as like cleaners, I like Jason Mark. I use Jason Mark quite a bit. They have like these like little quick wipes. Actually look like, you know, like if you go to a barbecue restaurant, you got those wet wipes. It's actually almost what it is. One side is smoother. The other side actually has little nubbies on it. If you get a scuff or just get a little, like I got some Air Max 270s that I got a little like drop of, I don't even know what it was. And I just pulled out one of those quick wipes, rubbed it on there, gone. These things are great. Also like Sneakers ER. It's a brand out of Europe, but a friend of mine here in the States is actually a distributor for them. Sneakers ER is fantastic. They also do like some, like the Turtle Dove Yeezys are kind of notorious for kind of, if you look on like where the midsole is and where the ribs are, where like the paints kind of come off the midsole, they
Yep.
actually have paints where you can just touch it up yourself and they match identically to that, which if you look at that, it's kind of like an all white. It's off white. It's not
Mhm.
really a true white. So Crep, Sneakers ER, Jason Mark. Jason Mark also you can buy. Crep also has a cleaner, but I really like Jason Mark just because they you can buy different brushes even. So like these Jordans I have on now, like they're like a suede. You know, I'm not going to take a like you know like some of the sneaker cleaners that you see out there. They have like a cap on the top of it, really harsh. I'm not going to spray that down, take that harsh brush and essentially ruin my suede. Like they have like a soft like horsehair brush that you can buy. It's very gentle on the suede, cleans it very well. But those are products that I use.
You know, and
And
this almost sounds like to me, you know, growing up, your dad like will buy you like a nice pair of dress shoes for
yeah,
like work or something like that. And then he
yeah,
teaches you how to clean them. I taught
yeah,
my 6-year-old when she had just turned 6. She said, "Dad, can you teach me how to clean my sneakers?"
yeah,
And so now I've had this moment that normally is like only a male to male scenario I have
yeah,
with my daughter and at 6 years old.
yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of a, like, I'm sure kind of the tricks of trade, like how I do it and like,
Oh
how you scrub them.
yeah,
And
my son's very well versed at it. Like I'll pick him up from school and like that's like, you know, I always say, "Hey man, how was your day?" You know, "Oh, it's cool. Can we clean these shoes when we get home tonight? I got a little grass stain on 'em." Like I mean, that's just something that he does. It's pretty funny, but he
so
definitely knows
let's
it.
talk about the sneaker business. Who
Yeah.
are the major purveyors or distributors or outlets of sneakers? If I'm looking to go buy them, where
Like
do
on
I
the
go?
resale market
In the
or
in non-resale market, so
okay.
direct from Nike, Adidas, New Balance,
Yeah,
your
I
stores.
mean, you always have your mainstream stores of like, you know, Champs, Foot Locker, Foot Action, Finish Line, East Bay. You know, they don't have a
And
storefront,
that's the
but they're
front line. It
that's
comes
the front
from
line.
Nike and
Yeah,
Adidas to these stores,
yeah,
correct?
yeah, absolutely. And but they're a lot of them are owned by the same company. Like Foot Locker also owns Foot Action, owns Champs, so a lot of their inventory comes from the same spot.
And JD Sports just bought somebody,
Finish Line.
Finish Line. So
Yep.
JD Sports out of the UK bought
Hmm.
Finish Line. So
Yeah.
Finish Line is one of the only ones kind of out of that
Yeah.
realm.
Yeah, they were kind of by themselves for a long time, you know, kind of I guess kind of still are. But those are like the mainstream mom and pop go to any mall. Each one of them, well, Foot Action and Foot Locker kind of have their specialty stores. You know, Foot Locker has House of Hoops. You know, we actually have two House of Hoops here in Kansas City. But Foot Action also has their Flight, you know, 23, the Jordan stores. One of my best friends that I mentioned earlier, Rich, actually manages the Jordan Flight store down in Atlanta at the Cumberland Mall.
And what makes that different than a regular Foot Locker?
They get more of the what's considered hype releases or limited releases. Like I'll show you here. So like the Travis Scott Jordan 4. Um, you know, these weren't distributed very far. You know, not many stores got these, but my friend Rich down in Atlanta, you know, was able to get these for me. You know, another what you would call influencer, I guess, you know, and he's a rapper, you know, but these were, you know, very sought after and I wanted them because I mean, it's a very wearable shoe for me. It's a beautiful shoe, very well made, you know. So it's a cool shoe.
And if you
So
don't want to shop super corporate, what are some of the big names that are in the sneaker game?
So a lot of the more famous boutique stores are like you know Kith in New York is one that people really think of first, probably. Concepts is another big store. I like supporting obviously Burn Rubber because those are some friends of mine up in Detroit, and Royal Oak. Also, I'm fortunate to know Matt Tomamichael at Corporate. The actual store is named Corporate in Cincinnati. That's another big store, but you also have like Undefeated. They have a few stores. Bait, it's another kind of iconic boutiques. And boutiques are different in that they'll get stuff that like the other like main chains won't get because Nike's very selective of where they put certain products. So they kind of get the more like, like your House of Hoops and your Flight 23 stores will get certain stuff, but these like tier one boutiques or what they call like for Adidas, it's called consortium. They'll get like those higher level. Actually, the highest level for Nike is tier zero, and those are the stores that get like the most limited shoes.
So let's say I'm into sneakers, I'm about to get into sneakers,
Mhm.
and obviously there's a ton of hype around a lot of these limited releases. I genuinely like one of these. Tell me about the second market for
Yeah,
sneakers. Who are the players in that? How
yeah,
does that work? Because I still got a chance to get
yeah.
these. I just probably not going to get them for retail
Yeah, and
price.
unfortunately, like things have gotten to a point where getting some of this stuff for the retail price is almost impossible. Unfortunately, unless you know somebody at a store or know somebody with what like a bot program for online releases, it's nearly impossible. There are companies that they called ATCs, add to cart companies, who they're all over Twitter. Some of them are better than others, but these are basically like websites or people that you'll pay a fee, like, hey, this Yeezy's coming out, in a few months or in a few weeks or whatever, and like you pay them to secure the shoe for you, and it automatically checks it out, ships it to you, and then they charge you a fee for that.
So you either got a connection inside somewhere
Yeah,
that's gonna kind of put them off to the side for you.
yeah,
You're gonna use potentially a bot, which is a computer program, to purchase them in the limited time frame.
yeah,
You've got your potential for an add to cart service, which is like an advanced bot,
yeah,
and then you've got tell me a little bit about someone like StockX and Goat, and then tell me a
yeah.
little bit about like people who actually flip or what we'd call like a sneaker plug.
Yeah. So, you have all those other platforms and you have like the resale platforms, recently like Goat and StockX are huge. And what's really, I mean, there's good and bad about those. What the good thing is for those is that you can make sure that they're authentic. Even though a few, what they call, replicas have kind of snuck through on a few, but for 99.9% of the time, they're truly authentic shoes, which you're kind of maybe paying a premium for that, but for me, like it kind of gives you that peace of mind that what you're buying is authentic.
Even though I'm not personally a big fan of StockX for a lot of personal reasons, I just don't like their customer service.
Mhm.
But what I think they've done that's pretty important is StockX treated it like the stock market to where
Yeah,
you can see, okay, this Turtle Dove Yeezy, at this time, here's all the past transactions. So there's a
yeah,
lot of transparency. So
yeah, it's pretty
companies
cool.
like that are actually regulating, what the price of a sneaker may be
Yeah,
based upon, like past data, which is pretty
yeah.
fascinating.
On StockX, or I actually have a portfolio. So I've actually entered in, all the shoes that I have in my inventory. Not most of the shoes in my inventory, and it actually automatically creates like a market value for what I have in my portfolio. It even breaks it down into like what percentages of my portfolio are Nike, what percentages are Jordan, Adidas, Asics, or whatever. And it's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool thing that they do. And from a selling standpoint, they've made it extremely simple. I mean, like my mom could sell a pair of shoes on there if she wanted to. I mean, just simply click sell now and it generates a label for you. Just slap it on a box and take it to UPS and you're done. So that's been pretty cool for them.
With the price of sneakers going through the roof, what's the most expensive pair of sneakers you've physically seen or held?
Probably I would have to say probably the Eminem Carhartt Jordan 4.
Would
Um,
you have an interesting story about that?
I do, yes. I was actually the middleman for a couple of the transactions first, or where they because this was a friends and family thing. Like this wasn't a retail shoe. Like there was rumored to be only 25 pairs made. But now knowing and seeing more pairs of those, they're probably a little bit closer to 40, maybe 50 pairs. But I knew someone that had them, wanted to get rid of them. I knew someone wanted to buy them, and it takes let's just say that the price of this shoe could buy a pretty nicely equipped Honda Accord.
Wow.
So and these were, when I first had the pair come to my house, like I took them out of the box, snapped a few pics, put them right back in the box, and got them out of my house quickly because I did not want those things to be in my house anymore. Like that's just kind of like when I was holding that shoe, I was like, I cannot believe I'm holding this thing in my hand. Like someone's willing to pay how much for this shoe? Um, that's probably the most expensive pair that I've had in my hand. But actually, beyond that, one of my best friends has a collection, the History of Flight collection, which Nike did as kind of like a promo just for like Nike stores, where it was every Jordan 1 through 23, um, with the uppers being all white and then the outsole being red. And from what and I could be off on this, but like I've been told that there was only 5 complete sets that were made. And a lot of them are on displays in actual Nike stores. But I know someone that has the entire collection 1 through 23 in his size, and as a collection, they're worth well into 6 figures.
Wow.
And I've seen and held these things, and it's breathtaking. Like it may not mean much to some people, but like that's it's freaking cool.
Here's a handful of interesting questions as we kind of come to the close to the closure of our podcast.
Yeah.
How important are jeans, sneakers, pants in comparison to shoes? We talk a lot about this.
Yeah, we do, and it's pretty awesome because it actually created, I think, like shoes actually created a big fashion trend. Like in 2010 ish, with the jogger pant, and like I think that style of pants has been huge in Europe forever. But like when it came to the States, it was a way to show off your shoe. Like you can't be wearing a nice pair of shoes and then wearing like a bootcut jean. Like
Not only does it look terrible, but it covers up the sneaker.
absolutely. And like if you're wearing a nice pair of shoes, like you want people to see it. So I have a friend of mine that I constantly make fun of him, like, dude, at least try slim fit. Let's not go full blown, dad jean. Like let's at least get some slim fit, maybe a little bit of taper because you want people to see them. Like why else, like for some people, like why else are you buying some of those stuff? It's because you want people to see it. So I think it's pretty important. I had myself, it kind of took a little while for me to come around to it just because joggers I always thought they kind of fit me funny, because I have what I would call an athletic build, so like, joggers look good on someone that's
Well, I
slender.
mean, you are a clone of David Beckham, so it would probably have to be an athletic build.
Yeah. So, but I've come around to it. My wife's got me into some skinny fit. I know my dad probably wouldn't be proud of that. He's the guy that wears stranglers on a daily basis, also known as wranglers, but we call them stranglers. So I think it's super important actually. Like I think it just looks better, number one, but like, man, show those shoes off, man.
Fill the listeners a little bit in on some of the let's say celebrities that you may not know are sneakerheads, and a couple that come to mind are
Oh, cool.
Jason Sudeikis,
Yeah.
comedian, Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Like Jerry
Oh, yeah.
Seinfeld was dropping heat every episode. Nobody
He
knew.
had some of the most iconic sneaker moments in history. Like the Carmine Jordan 6, like made, he in like the grape Jordan 5, like you see, like if you go back and like look at some of these things, like even like people like on Boy Meets World, like that he wore Jordans like through that show. The Fresh Prince wore Jordans all the time, which they just re-released a Fresh Prince Jordan 5 grape that didn't have any laces in it because that's how he wore it on the show. And actually, a friend of mine, actually Jeremy Guthrie, a player for the Royals, might be one of the biggest sneakerheads I've ever known. Like he actually had a house that in his basement had a actual bank vault door. Like he actually purchased a bank vault door with a big ass wheel on it to turn it, open it up, and like that was like like then like the lights from
That's
heaven come down and like
showmanship.
shine. I mean, it was cool. It was a really cool display. You can Google that on. It was
Next on complex sneaker shopping,
Yeah, actually-
going to Guthrie's house.
Actually, they did. Nice Kicks did
Okay.
did a interview with him, and like he showed a bunch of his stuff. You can see his bank vault door, so it's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Sudeikis is pretty cool because he wears whatever he wants. He likes it. He thinks it's cool. Like he's
And
a
he
huge
doesn't tell
sneakerhead.
anybody, he doesn't put it on
Nope,
blast. He's like Seinfeld,
nope.
just way underground.
He doesn't have social media. Like he doesn't have an official social media page. But if you see pictures of him at the red carpet, yeah, he might be in a really awesome suit, but he's got a pair of Jordans on.
What was he wearing last year at Thundergong that when you
Oh
went to that, you were
man.
like, dude, I didn't know Sudeikis was a sneaker guy.
I mean, I've always known that Sudeikis was a sneaker guy, but like when he came out in those Mars Yard, man, those were freaking cool.
And
Like
I think
from
that's what's
Tom
pretty cool
Sachs.
about it is being able to have great taste
Yeah,
about sneakers, but
yeah.
not rubbing them in everybody's face.
Yeah, I mean, he's very understated about it. Like, I mean, again, like you'd never know it. Like, you don't see him on blogs, you don't see him on social media, this or that. But every time you see him, like, he's got a cool pair of Jordans on. And he may be, it may not be like what's considered a hype pair of Jordans. It could be just a general release. Like, it could be just something, but he wears it because he thinks it's cool and he likes it. It's
Jason's a
pretty
big
cool.
Hirachi guy. I mean, you'll see him. He
Yeah,
he drives a Vespa in New York and wears
yeah,
Hirachis all the time. It's
yeah,
some of the weird juxtapositions
yeah,
of the world, but it's fascinating.
yeah.
If from the people listening, they ask the question, why should I give a hell about sneakers?
For some people, like, I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that, really. Because it's like I don't know if there's like a concrete reason as why this is why you need to like shoes. It's kind of like one of those things like you either like it or you don't. Like, and it's whether you're getting to the story behind the shoe or like for me, like it takes me back to my childhood. And then I think a lot of people get into it because it's like a hype thing to do. Like a lot of kids like get into it or whatever because they see like Travis Scott or Kanye or Drake or whoever out there, rocking these shoes. Like the influencers for me back when I was a kid was like, I remember I was in fifth grade and there was this kid in sixth grade and he was like the freaking cool kid of the school. His name was Ty Brookover. He was like the guy that all the girls liked. Like he came from from a pretty well off family, and he was like the fastest kid in the school. He was like a good athlete and stuff, and he wore the Jordan 4 white and cement. I'm like, man, I want to be like Ty. Like I want that shoe. Look at this guy. Like that was like the influencers back when I was a kid. Like, but now it's like with social media and everything. Like that's what kind of influences everything. Like what's on like what's who and what's so and so wearing, what's this doing. Like it's not even like really athletes anymore. It's designers. It's Kanye. It's Off White. Which if we have time, we can do an official unboxing that I just picked up from FedEx this morning. I got a nice little package from Germany that we can take a look at if we got time. But to the average everyday person, I don't know if they would get it. Like that's a delicate conversation that I've actually had to have with like girls that I'm dating or like when I got married, like talking to my wife about shoes and stuff. Like I think she's kind of starting to come around to it and kind of gets it. Like
Heidi will come around.
Heidi's starting to get it. Like whenever
Heidi
she was,
come around.
yeah. My wife kind of gets it. She's like, I don't know if I'm cool enough to pull these off. I'm like, babe, you are built to wear shoes like this. Like this is cool. Like whenever, and I think she kind of got it whenever she was wearing her Yeezys around New York, because not very often do you see like for me, it's like a sneakerhead's dream. Like my wife is a very beautiful, tall, blonde woman. She's gorgeous. You couple that with a nice pair of shoes, and I'm like, oh my God, like I think my heart's about to stop. Like walking around New York and she's wearing these Yeezys and like people are like giving her compliments and she's like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like I think she kind of gets it. Like when people compliment her on what she's wearing, she's like, it's an ego boost. Like who doesn't like to hear like, hey, nice shoes. Like that's cool. Like, so my wife's kind of getting it. I'm a very blessed man. I think I outkicked my coverage on that one. She didn't even know it, but like that's.
If I'm new to the sneaker game, where would you suggest I start researching, figuring out what I like and I don't like?
Yeah, so it's pretty easy these days. Obviously, social media can be good and bad, but like, there's a lot of really good Twitter feeds out there. Twitter, I think, is where I get most of my information from. Like, people are like, "How do you know this is releasing?" I'm like, "Dude, we know release dates all the way into 2019 already." I frequent like Nice Kicks. Nice Kicks does a really good job with their blog. Sneaker News does a really good job. Actually, one of the best spots for like Jordans and things like that is uh, the J23, and they actually have an app that will give you updates, and they keep their calendars updated, pretty regularly with like what's releasing, when it's releasing. You'll get notifications like if something like a surprise drop, like Off White did a surprise drop of their UNC, the Carolina Blue Off White Jordan 1s. Nike just out of the blue did a drop in this app like just automatically did a alert, and like I remember I was just sitting at home and like I got this link on my phone like, oh, this can't be real. So I clicked it and actually was able to get it that way. So it's you have to pay for the app, but it's worth it. So like just that one, just being able to get one release alone is well worth it.
If I'm a friend, a spouse, a parent of,
Yeah.
a kid who's interested in
Mhm.
sneakers, what would you suggest be a first pair of sneakers? What can you not go wrong with?
You cannot ever go wrong with a Jordan 1. Like I just for me, like I think that's just like an just very iconic, very wearable shoe. And it's a shoe like especially for like a kid, like they're not going to destroy that shoe. It's I mean it's number one, it's leather, so if you get it dirty, it's going to clean easily. There's so many different colorways of them out there that you can wear them with anything. Like I got my son a pair of the black and gray Shadow ones, and he absolutely loves them. Matches everything. And for me, as someone that bought them, I don't care if he goes and runs through the mud in them. And I think that's important. Um, can never go wrong with a Jordan 3, a Jordan 11. And then on the runner side, like Air Max 1s, Air Max 90s, Hirachis, like those are shoes that are never going to go out of style. They're always going to be popular. Very wearable, very comfortable. That's probably where I would start with
Is
with
it
a lot of
also
shoes.
fair to say that if somebody wrote down what you just said, and they had no clue what these things looked like,
Yep.
but if they wrote down what you just said, they could
Yep.
walk into a Foot Locker anywhere and go, "Hey, man, I listened to this EX5 podcast, and there's this dude saying these are some pretty
Yeah.
hot sneakers." That's a pretty universal list, correct?
Oh, absolutely. You can walk in anywhere and ask for those shoes, and it's there's always going to be an Air Max 1, an Air Max 90, a Hirachi, there's a Jordan 1. Those are going to be on shelves always at every store that you could ever, because Nike knows what they're doing. Like those are iconic shoes for a reason. And Nike will always re-release those shoes, new colorways. Like they've released the Chicago. I saw the other day that the Chicago Jordan 1, for the white, black, and red are
Yep.
coming back again next year with
Fantastic. Put me on the list, Todd.
you're down. With different variations, like it's going to have a translucent sole, and there's going to be a little bit of texture to the leather, so it's going to have like almost a reptilian kind of look to it. So, that'll be a big shoe, a very iconic shoe.
What's the one thing you want listeners to take away out of your story, out of the sneaker story, out of everything?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me, and the thing that I've really learned over the course of being a sneakerhead for now, gosh, 35 years probably, it's don't listen to what other people say is important about shoes. Figure out what it is about shoes that's important to you, what they mean to you, what they represent to you, wear what you like. Don't try to fit into a mold of what somebody else likes. Like figure out what it is to you that you like. For me, it's shoes that take me back to my childhood. And now that I'm, an older dad, it's like that are sensible, fit into my style. Comfort is important and wearability. But just figure out what it is, what it means to you. Like find your lane and drive in it, and that's I know, and it's hard for like kids, like going into junior high, going into high school, because you want to be accepted, you want to fit in, you want to wear what the cool kids are wearing, and it's navigating that can be tough, because I mean it was tough for me as well, because as a kid, I moved around a lot. I was in one place, for a couple years, but luckily I was an athlete, so I was automatically, I accepted wherever I went, but like also was kind of like, hey, those are some cool shoes, man. So like it automatically kind of made me feel accepted wherever I went. So that was something that was important for me, but just figure out what you like and just don't really worry about what other people think about it. Don't get me wrong, it's cool when somebody like compliments me on my shoes, like I feels good, but like I don't buy them to get compliments. I buy them because I like them. I buy them to wear them. And that's just figure out what it means to you.
And fun fact about Todd Hitchcock, you can ball. You're not like me, right? Like I buy sneakers because I like them and they look good and they're comfortable and I'm into things that require taste. But I can't hoop for a damn compared to you.
I do still play a lot of basketball, so that's another thing that I fall into a trap of is I have a lot of shoes that I play basketball in. I have a rotation. I play a lot of basketball, so I also pay a lot attention to performance shoes. Like the new Jordan that's coming out on the 18th it's going to be revolutionary. this shoe. Like it breaks a lot of molds. It's a awesome shoe. Like, and I'm gonna buy it because it's like it's just a great shoe. Like a friend of mine brought him back, and I don't, and it's not like a spoiler alert or anything, but it doesn't have any laces. You put your foot in it, you pull this tab on the top of it, and it automatically like sucks your like there's cables all around your foot and just molds instantly to your foot. And that's it. That's
That's
all you do.
incredible.
And then there's like a release tab you pull whenever you wanna pull
If
it out of
people
it.
want to find you on the internet and be your friend,
Yeah.
where would they find you?
Yeah, so on Twitter and Instagram, I made it real easy. It's just at Todd Hitchcock. Real easy to find. I don't know if it's too interesting of a feed, but I'll post a lot of things that I get, here and there. Post a lot of photos. You'll see my son on there. My wife will be on there. My daughter will be on there. It's a family affair when it comes to shoes. It's my son got to he's kind of a shoe celebrity for lack of a better term sometimes, because it's not often you see kids rocking shoes like him,
And
but
your kid's adorable and hilarious. So
yeah, I think people are friends with me just so they can hang out with my son, honestly,
that's a
sometimes,
true
which
fact.
I don't blame him because he's a cool kid. He's way cooler than I am.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I
Yeah,
appreciate you educating our listeners on the sneaker
sure.
game, and wish the best to you.
Can you just explain it like I'm 5?